She was simply picking up shell casings on the shooting range. No uniform, no name tag, just a civilian worker with a bucket. She was the kind of person no one would notice at a sniper training course until a special ops sniper made a mistake. He handed her the rifle and challenged her in front of everyone, taunting her, loud and confident. What happened next? She didn't hesitate. No boasting. She just stepped up to the firing line and hit the target at 285 meters like it was nothing. Before we tell you how the story played out, leave a comment below, letting us know where you're watching from. And if you respect stories about quiet professionals, don't forget to subscribe, because this story is one you'll never forget. That morning, the NATO sniper training range didn't wake up gently. The sun rose like a hammer, making the desert air thick and stifling. Shell casings littered the shooting lanes, too hot to touch. And that's where you'd find Erin Bell every morning, sitting between the firing positions, picking up what everyone else left behind. She moved through the crowd like smoke. Gray t-shirt, old utility pants, steel-toed boots, a low-worn cap, cleaning up after the ones who were actually working. The training range was an international week. NATO snipers from 6 countries participated, proving their unit shot better than anyone else. The British accents mixed with the precision of the Germans, the French technique facing off against the American pride. Gunshots echoed, commands reverberated, and shell casings bounced across the ground. Amid all of this, Erin worked with quiet efficiency, picking up shell casings, inspecting them between her fingers, dropping them into the bucket. She didn't just pick them up randomly, she sorted them as she went. Different calibers were placed in different sections of the bucket. Casings with special wear marks were kept in a separate compartment. Her fingers would occasionally linger over a casing, reading the story told by the marks from the firing pin and the traces left by the ejector. But the young snipers, preparing their gear just a few meters away, didn't see any of this. They only saw a middle-aged woman in a worker's outfit doing menial labor. "She's definitely here to criticize our shooting, right?" one of them said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Maybe she's just happy with a stable job," another replied, and a few of his friends snickered. Erin's hands didn't stop. She'd heard worse remarks from snipers far more skilled than these. The best response was no response at all. Sergeant Kyle Jennings watched from the observation tower, the coffee in his hand, long cold. He'd been running this training range for 3 years, had seen every type of worker, those who did just enough to finish the task, those who asked too many questions. But this one was different. There was something about the way she moved, the way she organized her gear, that suggested Erin Bell was more than just what her personnel file said. Down on the firing line, Sergeant Hamish Vickers was showing off. The British sniper came with an ego as big as his rifle case and a mouth that never stopped. His L-15 rifle gleamed like jewelry. "All right, guys," he announced to no one in particular. "It's time to show you what real accuracy looks like. I've made a 2,500-meter shot before any of you could even tie your shoelaces." Erin didn't look up, continuing her sorting, occasionally inspecting a shell before dropping it into one of the compartments in the bucket. Her movements were effective, but there was something different about them, a precision that went beyond just picking up trash. From the observation position, Jennings noticed she never interrupted the shooting rhythm of the other snipers. She waited for natural pauses, only moving when it wouldn't be a distraction. Her spatial awareness wasn't a skill of an ordinary worker. He made sure everyone knew exactly how difficult this shot was. "The wind is unpredictable at this distance," he announced. "The temperature difference will push the bullet to the left. Elevation will be crucial. This is a real sniper shot." He stabilized his rifle with precision, taking more time than necessary to ensure he was comfortable. Everyone around him waited patiently, understanding that shots like this couldn't be rushed. Erin stopped sorting the shell casings. She was watching intently, her focus so intense that others could see. She noticed details they couldn't. Her eyes moved from his bipod position to the scope adjustments, from his breathing to how the rifle sat firmly against his shoulder. Jennings followed her gaze, trying to see what she saw. Vickers looked professional, good posture, steady position, correct technique, but Erin's expression revealed concern. The shot came after what seemed like an eternity. A sharp crack, suspended in the quiet air, followed by the wait for confirmation. Through the scope, everyone saw the bullet trace disappear in the heat waves. Seconds passed. Then more. "Miss," the safety officer from the observation tower called. "No hit." Vickers looked genuinely surprised. He turned, checked his scope settings, and muttered about the wind conditions. But Jennings kept his focus on Erin, noticing her shake her head, not in judgment, but in realization of a problem that had existed before the shot was even fired. "What did you see?" he asked softly. Erin glanced at him, then back at Vickers. "The scope mount has probably been loose since about 50 shots ago," she replied. Jennings was taken aback. The issue with the scope mount was subtle, the kind of problem that could gradually reduce accuracy without obvious signs. It took experience to notice, and even more experience to diagnose it from that distance. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Sure," Erin answered, then went back to collecting the shell casings. "But it's not my rifle." Vickers prepared for his second shot. His confidence was shaken, but his pride remained. He did a quick equipment check, adjusted his position, and reviewed his dope card. But if the scope mount was indeed loose due to recoil, no amount of preparation could fix that underlying problem. The second shot missed as well. This time, Vickers's frustration became evident to everyone. From dramatic confidence to genuine confusion in just 2 shots, the audience began to lose interest. That's when Jennings decided to change everything. He calmly approached Vickers's position, his purpose clear. "Mind if I check your gear?" Vickers looked up, his face red from the heat and embarrassment. "What's going on?" "This rifle was shooting perfectly yesterday." Jennings knelt beside the rifle, running his hand along the mount and scope with practiced ease. It only took him about 30 seconds to find the problem Erin had noticed from 50 feet away, a loose screw that had gradually worked itself loose from the recoil. "This is your issue," Jennings said, pointing to the loose part. "The scope has shifted with every shot." Vickers stared at the loose screw as if it had betrayed him. "How did you spot that so fast?" Jennings glanced at Erin, who was trying to ignore the conversation while continuing to collect the casings. "It wasn't me," he replied. "She saw it." This caught everyone's attention. The crowd of observers turned to look at the quiet woman in the work clothes, now seeing her in a new light. Vickers also followed their gaze, his expression shifting from embarrassment to curiosity. "She spotted the loose scope mount from over there," one of the snipers in the crowd asked. "Incredulous." Jennings nodded. "Even before you fired," silence fell, filled with unasked questions. How did a maintenance worker know enough about sniper rifles to spot a mechanical issue from afar? Why was someone with such expertise doing support work at a training range? And more importantly, what else did she know that she wasn't saying? Vickers was the first to break the silence, approaching Erin with a much humbler attitude than he'd had all day. The rifle now treated with respect, rather than flaunted as a trophy. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice filled with humility. "And clearly, I also owe you thanks." Erin looked up, her face impassive, simply sharing an observation. "That observation probably saved me from looking like an idiot." Vickers replied, "How did you know to check the mount?" The question hung in the air like a wisp of gun smoke. Everyone within earshot was listening, waiting for an answer that might explain how a maintenance worker understood sniper rifles better than the snipers themselves. Erin thought for a moment, then shrugged. "You just learn." It was an answer that wasn't clear, but it left everyone more curious than any explanation she could have given. Her response hinted at depths of experience that weren't immediately obvious in her current job. Vickers looked at Erin with growing curiosity. His initial embarrassment had turned into genuine interest in this woman who seemed to understand his equipment better than he did. "You know," he said, thinking about the rifle in his hands, "if you can spot problems like that, I'm really curious to see how you shoot." The words escaped his mouth before he had a chance to think them through. But as soon as they were spoken, they seemed to take on a life of their own. The crowd watching immediately took notice. Even the trainers stopped what they were doing to listen. Erin looked at the rifle, then at Vickers, and then at the expectant faces around her. At first, it seemed like she would refuse, but the intense gaze of the crowd seemed to inspire her to make a decision. "All right," she said simply, setting down the bucket of shell casings and wiping her hands on her pants. The reaction was immediate and strong. Word spread like wildfire through the training range. The maintenance worker was about to shoot. People abandoned their positions to come watch. Even the administrative staff left their air-conditioned offices to see what was happening. Vickers handed her the rifle, now much more serious than before. This was a precision tool worth more than most people's cars, and he was handing it over to someone whose skill level was completely unknown. But as Erin took the rifle, her immediate handling made it clear she was very familiar with it. She didn't fumble with the controls or ask about the setup. Instead, she began a pre-shot check, inspecting the chamber, aligning the scope, and adjusting the mount with practiced efficiency. "How far do you want to shoot?" Jennings asked. Pulling out the training range card, Erin looked ahead, where the steel targets shimmered in the heat. Her eyes stopped on the silhouette 3, 285 meters away, the target set for the most ambitious of snipers. A target that represented the absolute limit of what could be achieved with the current equipment and perfect conditions. "That target," she said, pointing at the steel target in the distance. The crowd fell silent. 285 meters was a distance far beyond the effective range of most military snipers. This was a distance that required not just excellent skill, but perfect conditions and a bit of luck. Even the most experienced snipers here had avoided this challenge. Vickers looked genuinely worried. "That's a tough shot," he said. "I mean, if you want to start closer, I'm game." "No worries," Erin replied, already moving into a prone position with efficient flexibility. She settled behind the rifle as though this was where she belonged, setting the bipod, adjusting the stock, and bracing her chin. All of it happened with muscle memory that showed thousands of hours of practice with similar rifles. Her breathing settled into a rhythm of control that professional snipers use to manage their heart rate and minimize movement. Jennings stood beside her, watching through the scope. His role, from curious observer, had shifted to shot support. He had worked with enough skilled snipers to recognize real talent when he saw it. And everything about how Erin prepared showed that she knew exactly what she was doing. "The wind's shifting," he called out, reading the wind flag up ahead. "About 2 to 3 mph, changing from 7 to 9 o'clock. Erin made a slight adjustment to the scope, her movements precise and confident. She wasn't guessing the settings. She was calculating them based on environmental conditions and ballistics data that seemed to live only in her head. The first shot came after a long period of preparation. Erin's breath was steady, deep, and controlled, a rhythm that demonstrated her understanding that precise sniping wasn't just skill. It was a form of meditation. The rifle seemed to disappear into her shoulder, becoming an extension of her body rather than a separate tool. When the trigger was pulled, the sharp crack of the shot was sudden and piercing. The rifle recoiled straight into her shoulder, the recoil pad redirecting the shock with controlled force. Through the scope, Jennings tracked the bullet's path as it traced a curve through the heat-distorted air. "Hit," he called, his voice tinged with surprise despite his calm exterior. Right in the center of the target, the crowd reacted immediately and enthusiastically. The sound of applause mixed with astonished words in many different languages. Even the most experienced snipers had to be impressed. A hit on the first try at that distance was extraordinary by any standard. But Erin wasn't done. She rotated the bolt with practiced efficiency, ejecting the spent casing and chambering a new round. Her breathing settled back into a rhythm of control as she began preparing for the second shot. "Same target?" Jennings asked. "Same target." "You confirm," Erin said. And the second shot came even quicker than the first. Erin had found her rhythm, and the rifle seemed to speak to her in a language only experienced snipers could understand. The recoil, the feel of the trigger, the way the scope returned to the target. Everything was operating perfectly. "Hit," Jennings called, his voice full of surprise, though his professional calm remained intact, right in the center of the target. The crowd's reaction wasn't just surprise anymore. It was awe. 2 consecutive shots at 285 meters wasn't just a good shot. It was the kind of performance that only the world's top snipers could achieve. Even the most elite military snipers would be proud of that level of accuracy. Erin cycled the bolt for the third time, Her movements remained smooth and controlled as before, but now, the entire range had fallen silent. Even the administrative staff had left their desks to witness this sniper performance they would never forget. "Third shot?" Jennings asked, though he already knew the answer. "Third shot," Erin confirmed. This time, she took extra time to stabilize, not because of nerves, but because she understood the gravity of what she was about to do. 3 consecutive shots at extreme distance weren't just impressive. They were the kind of shots that could enter the realm of legend. The trigger was pulled perfectly, sharp and sudden, followed by the controlled recoil. Through the scope, Jennings watched the bullet's path with the focus of someone witnessing a historic moment. "Hit," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 perfect shots. The silence that followed was profound. This wasn't just good shooting. This was accuracy that far surpassed anything anyone would expect from a maintenance worker at a training range. Erin cleared the chamber and placed the rifle down with the same respect she had shown throughout the display. She didn't celebrate, didn't acknowledge the applause, and showed no sign of being affected by the evident amazement of all the observers. She simply stood up, brushed the dust off her pants, and started to pack up her gear. But the range had changed. The way people looked at her was different now. No longer was she someone to be dismissed, but someone who had just demonstrated elite sniper skills. Vickers took his rifle back, with a reverence that was nearly ceremonial. "That was an incredible shot," he said, his voice no longer filled with pride. "Your rifle was set up really well," Erin responded, downplaying the compliment with a familiar humility. "Just needed to tighten the mount." But everyone who had witnessed the display knew that the equipment was only part of the equation. What they had just seen was the result of thousands of hours of training, thousands of hours of practice, and a level of expertise that couldn't be faked or explained away as lucky shots. Jennings was the first to voice the question everyone was thinking. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Erin looked at him for a moment, considering her answer. Around them, the crowd was waiting for an explanation that could clarify what they had just witnessed. "Here and there," she finally replied, using the same vague answer as before. But this time, no one laughed, because they understood that here and there could mean places and situations most of them couldn't even imagine. As the crowd began to disperse, everyone spoke about what they had just seen. Stories began to form, details were embellished, and the legend of the worker who shot like a ghost started to take shape. But Erin just picked up the bucket of shell casings and returned to her work, carefully collecting the spent shells from her test shots with the same attention to detail she had shown all day. To anyone watching, she remained the quiet worker who had been invisible throughout the morning. Except now, everyone knew she was far from that. The observers all recognized it. Erin's personal file remained uncomfortably thin, but Jennings had reached out to some contacts in the special operations community. The responses he received were truly intriguing. No one confirmed or denied anything specific, but the subtle warnings were clear. Don't dig too deep. Don't ask too many questions. Some people had a past better left untouched. However, he did receive one piece of information that explained everything, yet explained nothing at all. Many years ago, there had been a program. Officially, it had never existed. Unofficially, it included the most elite snipers from every branch of the military, those who could make unbelievable shots under extreme conditions. The program was canceled. The members reassigned to new duties or returned to civilian life. Most had disappeared into ordinary jobs, their extraordinary skills buried beneath the anonymity of bureaucratic work. Some, clearly, had ended up picking up shell casings at military training ranges, waiting for the day someone would hand them a rifle and ask them to show what they could do. The next morning, Erin arrived at work on time and began her usual routine. But the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. People nodded as she passed. Conversations quieted when she approached. Equipment began to appear near her workspace, rifles that needed inspection, scopes that required adjustment, problems only someone with her expertise could solve. Erin didn't react to the change. She continued her work with the silent efficiency she always had. But now, as she worked on a rifle, everyone watched. When she made a comment about the equipment or the conditions, people listened. The training range now had a new expert, one whose official record couldn't be found, but whose abilities had been made unmistakably clear to all the key people. Vickers approached her around mid-morning, carrying his rifle box with more humility than the day before. "I was wondering," he said, his voice much more cautious. "Could you take a look at this scope mount? I want to make sure it's tightened properly." Erin looked up from the rifle she was cleaning, nodded once, and began to tidy up her workspace. As she started to inspect his equipment with professional attention, Vickers found himself unexpectedly focusing on her hands. "You know," he said softly, "I've been shooting for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone handle a rifle like you." "How so?" Erin asked, not looking up from her work. "It's like you were born with a rifle in your hands," he replied. She paused for a moment in her work, then resumed adjusting the scope mount. Some people learn faster than others, but both of them understood that what Erin was demonstrating wasn't something you could pick up quickly. It was the result of years of dedication, thousands of hours of practice, and experiences that had left an indelible mark on her muscle memory and tactical thinking. As time went on, news of her performance spread beyond the training range. Calls were made to the command center, reports were sent out, and quietly, discreetly, people began to ask questions about Erin Bell and her past. But the answers always came back the same: need-to-know access only, all classified, no further investigation. The message was clear: some people's pasts were better left in silence. Skills should be kept secret, and abilities the world didn't want to remember should remain hidden. But in a military training range in the desert, where accuracy and proficiency were the only values that mattered, there was no room for administrative forgetfulness. Here, in the world of real snipers and real equipment, Erin Bell had found her place. Not as a worker, not as a support staff member, but as someone deserving to stand behind the rifle, turning impossible shots into routine achievements. The next morning, Erin showed up early as usual, carrying a bucket of shell casings and wearing old cargo pants, looking like any other maintenance worker until someone handed her a rifle. And in that instant, everyone realized who she truly was: a sniper who could consecutively hit 3 times at a distance of 285 meters. A person who made even the top snipers reconsider the definition of excellence. An expert who had been hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to give her the opportunity to show what true silence could achieve when backed by world-class skill. She simply collected shell casings until the day she no longer did. Have you ever witnessed someone prove they were extraordinary without saying a word? Would you have the confidence to hand your precision rifle to a stranger? And what do you think it takes to consistently hit a target more than 2 miles away? If this story moved you, hit the like button and let us know where you're watching from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on daily stories of unsung heroes and anonymous warriors. The next video will appear on your screen right now. Watch it, because tomorrow we'll be back with another story that will remind you never to underestimate the quiet ones. Until then, keep your eyes open. You never know who might be extraordinary.